All right, we are in the 4th chapter, and we are on the 13th Mishnah. And the Mishnah says as follows. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Hevi Zohir B'Salmud. Be very careful with your learning of Talmud, which is specifically a reference to Gemara, actually. Sheshigagas Talmud oile zadon. Because if a person is not cautious with recalling and trying to understand clearly their studies within Talmud, it eventuates in or is considered as a deliberate transgression. Very strange. What does that mean? Rabbi Shimon Omer, and then to take this initial teaching and have it evolve into the following statement is really perplexing. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon taught, Shloisha Kesorim Hein. There are 3 crowns, famous teaching that we've heard before, I'm sure. There are 3 crowns. Keser Torah, there is the crown of Torah. The Keser Kahuna, there is the crown of priesthood. The Cheser Malchus, and there is the crown of kingship. Seemingly 3 elements of prominence or stature. If a person's a Talmudic scholar, they know a lot of Torah, they receive a certain crown and are held in acclaim. Same too with the crown of priesthood. An individual is obviously elevated to be in the service of the temple, and we know we have certain rights that the Kohanim get and certain honorable actions that we extend towards them. The Cheser Malchus, and then there is the crown of the kingship, which is if a person's a king, obviously they have some form of stature. The Cheser Shem Tov Oila Al Gebehen, but the crown of a good name rises above all of them. Sure, I mean, okay, it sounds nice, yeah? Having a good name. We all know about the importance of having a good name. Sounds very nice, sounds beautiful. What does it mean? What does it mean that it rises above all of them? How is it connected to the initial part of the Mishnah that says that a person needs to be very careful with their study of the Talmud, that if a person's lax within their study of the Talmud, it eventuates in a deliberate transgression? How does that link in Bichlal? What is the teaching here? Okay, very, very, very enigmatic teaching at the moment. You know, if you want to tell me, have a good name, and what does a good name even mean? Does it mean that I have to do my best to have my PR out there in the public, that people know I'm a good person? You know, I have to publicize every time I do something good, so I have a good name. What does it mean that I have to have a good name? How does a person even get a good name? You know, Sarah didn't want to marry me because my last name was Ojek. You know, who wants to marry an Ojek coming from a Gordon? What does it mean to have a good name? You know, what does a good name mean? So what's going on here? Did anyone want to have a attempt at understanding this Mishnah at a perfunctory glance? I can tell you, I definitely struggled with this Mishnah. When I saw it, I nearly had a breakdown. I said, "Oy Gewalt, well, how am I gonna learn this Mishnah? This is a tough one. This is really hard." And Baruch Hashem, yeah, let's have a look. Jeremy Yehuda.
Whatever. Okay, so one thing that I was thinking is, with regard to Torah, you're learning. With regard to Kahuna, it is something that comes by way of family, something that is hereditary. I can't remember, what was the third thing that we said?
We said kingship.
Kingship. Okay, yeah. So that's also hereditary. You can't miss out on those 2 or 3. But a good name is something that you've got to work on. It's something that you've got to aspire to. It's only you that can bring about that.
But same
whereas
with
the other
Torah.
things are sort of like given.
Torah you can also, Torah's in your own hands as well. Judith, we're going to come
That's
to you.
also in your own hands, but I mean, you can learn that, and that's it. But a good name is something that you've got to work on personally.
You also need to work on Torah. You need to work on studying Torah and becoming a Talmudic scholar. That's up to you.
No, that's true, but you can still have a very bad attitude about life and stuff like that. Whereas having a good name is different. Something that you've got to work on you've got to work very hard on.
You're saying that having a good name is very hard. How do you work on that? How do you have a good name?
I'm not saying it's very hard. Sorry, okay, I expressed myself wrong. But it's something you've got to work on. It's something that just doesn't come because you've got a nice smile, or you've got this or that, or you've got a good family that you're coming from. You can come from the best family, but if you've got a horrible attitude towards life, life is going to treat you in the same way. So it's being positive about life and reaching out to people, and so on.
Okay, beautiful. So you're saying that it's almost the crescendo here of these things. Like, you have to be careful how you're linking it to the study of Torah. I'm not sure, but you're saying the first three, even though Torah is something you have to work towards, it could be that you were given a lot of Torah when you were a child, where you were put into a good school and you knew what to do and how to learn. And the priesthood as well as the kingship is something that you can inherit. But a good name is something you really need to work on. And you're explaining a good name means that you have a good perception of life, you have a positivity, and that creates a good name for you. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that, Yehuda. Let's, Judith has raised her hand so politely. Judith, and then Jenny, you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good morning to everyone.
Judith, I just want to comment before you speak. We can hear the beautiful birds in the background there. That was very, very inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
Can
Yes,
you ask them to tweet again, please?
I'm sure they will as I talk.
Okay. Good.
I'm sitting outside. For me, I joined this morning particularly because of what we are discussing, and it really caught my attention. For me, a good name is when you leave this earth one day, that is all that will be left, and how you will be remembered by. And so you could have been, let's say, like a king and lived like a king, and you could have had wealth, you could have studied Torah. You could have done all these things and had all these things in terms of the physicality, but a good name is not something which is physical, but it is through your actions and how you have engaged with others that you will have a good name.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So you're saying this is really what you're leaving behind, and a good name is something that actually comes with you. It stays with you, and it's something that you work towards achieving, and it's something that really is on a spiritual level in terms of accomplishment, if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, a good name goes to the very essence of your being. It goes to the dignity of a human person. Beautiful. And if I could just have a few seconds, for me, this was so clear when I was involved with the Gabby Cabron's murder trial, and how her name had been completely and utterly trashed in the media. They had said the most horrendous things about her. And the murderer had also said the most horrendous things about her. And one of the most important things for the parents was through the trial and the media was the only thing that they could still save of their child was her good name and who she was as a person, the beautiful person they knew. So yeah, it's got quite a deep meaning for me, because it's something I lived through with parents who were grieving.
Yeah, I think I really I love what you've said, that a name is a reference to the essence of a person. And if we take this Mishnah in context now, and we look at it holistically, I think there's a very powerful teaching that we have here. And we understand that the whole role of life is to tap into our essence, to tap into the essence of who we are. And this Mishnah, if we look at it, and this interpretation that I'm about to share with you comes from the Resisei Liala, very deep book that comes from the explanation of Tzadok HaKoen in Lublin, as well as the Maharal of Prague, bring these very, very deep understandings. And it really culminates in a similar teaching that you're sharing with us, Judith. Let's have a look. Rabbi Yehuda said, Havi Zahir b'Talmud. Be very careful with the study of Talmud. It doesn't say Havi Zahir b'Torah. It doesn't say be careful with Torah study. It says be careful with Talmudic study. Shishigagas Talmud oile, because if you forget Torah or you make an error in Torah, it ends up being a deliberate transgression. What we have to understand is the following. The purpose of life is to clarify that which isn't clear. And all of us struggle in our existence to tap into our essence. We are looking for our essence. Now, the initial standpoint or the initial experience of that struggle is very much engaged with through the study of the Talmud. Okay, and we've mentioned this a number of times. And we do this in the midday here now in lockdown, where we learn Talmud. And those that have engaged with that study, and we've had, I think Andrea has joined us for one of those sessions, but those that engage with the study of Talmud will attest to the experience of it being quite confusing. And there's a lot of doubt, a lot of back and forth, a lot of gray. And it seems that a person doesn't know what's really going on, and sometimes we end up not really knowing what's going on at the end of our session as well. But the whole purpose of the Talmud is to clarify what is in doubt. We have contentions, we have confusions, we have aspects which we're unclear about, contradictions in fact. And we come out with one raison d'etre, and that is to clarify, to alleviate the doubt, to enter into a clear space. And that's the initial part of the Mishnah here, that Rabbi Yehuda is saying, be careful with Talmud specifically, not the written Torah, not even the Mishnayos. It says specifically the Talmud, because the Talmud there is really guiding us through to clarify doubt. When you're learning the Torah in the written Torah, you pick up a Chumash, it's quite clear. Obviously, it's many things you can investigate, but these are clear, aspects from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But when you go into the oral Torah, there's a lot of deliberation that needs to take place. And same too, that's the deliberation that needs to take place in our own souls. And now, this is where this links in. Rabbi Shimon comes along and maps out the crowns of deliberation. And the Maharal explains, what is a crown? A crown is something that is separate from your body. A crown is not you, it is something separate, it's elevated. And now what he explains is there is a map of experience within ourselves, within our being, within our experience of the world, that is constantly hinging on truth and our essence, and on that which is confusion and distraction and states of despondency and states of the egoic self. And we're constantly hinging between those two elements. And what the crown represents is where we've been able to elevate the experience within ourselves on these different levels to enter into our essence. That's what the crown represents. It says that in the world to come, we'll have the tzaddikim that sit with crowns on their head. Why do you need a crown in your head? The Ben Ish Chai explains, the Ben Yehoyada explains that a crown is going to be almost like the satellite, or the ability to almost tap into the essence of God through the crown, whatever that means. But it represents spirituality, it represents the essence, as you're speaking about there, Judith. So what are these different levels of engagement? So the Maharal and the Reb Tzadok HaKoen explain the following. The first one is our Keter Torah, the crown of Torah. And that represents the intellect. That represents the chokhmah, the wisdom of a person. And he explains that these places are places of pleasure. These places are places of gifts, of experience. And there are essentially three places that we are gifted the experience of pleasure. The first is in our wisdom. A person can experience pleasure within wisdom. But what the Resisei Liala explains is that wisdom can be manipulated and can be poisoned in its experience. It can be mutated in experience towards negativity, meaning you can take your wisdom toward rishus, towards evil, towards experiencing wisdom within a negative framework. And where we see here that the crown of that experience of wisdom, a person can use their intellect to really exacerbate their egoic self. But what we're seeing is the crown of intellect, i.e. the spiritual essence of our intellect, of our chokhmah, of our wisdom, is the study of Torah, is the experience of Torah, is the investment in Torah. Okay? To find joy in depth and in the essence of a person, which is what Torah represents, is the greatest wisdom. Then we have something called the Keser Kahuna. The Keser Kahuna is the reference to our bodies. And what the Reb Tzadok HaKoen explains is another framework of pleasure and experience is within the physical, where a person is able to utilize their body through the exacerbation or expression of power through the physical. What he brings there is a person gets a geschmack out of getting angry. Yeah, they feel like, geschmack when they feel getting angry. I mean, it's the most horrible experience afterwards. And even if you're somewhat conscious during the anger, you feel horrible as well. But there's something in anger that draws a person in. He says it can go even to the extent of murder. A person gets like a feeling out of it, of power, of experience of power in the body. And he also says that that's also the experience of a person's sexuality. That when a person expresses themselves or engages within negative forms of immorality, then a person gets a form of experience which is pleasurable. And what he explains here is the keser, the essential keser, the crown, the spiritual apex of our bodies, the most pleasurable experience that's made or found within our bodies is actually within the conquering of our inclination. That is where the greatest strength is experienced. That is where the greatest power or prowess is experienced, in the conquering of one's inclination. And that's represented by the priests, by the kohanim, because a kohen would have to be very cautious with their physicality. They would be somewhat separated. They were also spiritual in their own bodies, meaning if their bodies weren't on a certain level of perfection, they would not be allowed to be priests. And the priesthood represents the ability to conquer one's inclinations, to be able to be a power over the negative inclination, okay, within the physical state. And that's really the mission that says, Ezo Gibor, who is the one that is mighty, HaKoen the one that conquers the inclination. And what we're seeing here from Reb Tzadok HaKoen is sometimes the greatest feeling of pleasure in the body is the feeling of being able to conquer, the feeling of being able to be strong over one's inclination. Then the Keser of Malchus, the crown of kingship, represents the element of happiness, of joy, of simcha, an emotion. And that, according to the Kabbalists, would be a reference to one's ruach, where we've understood that the first part was one's intellect, one's chokhmah. The next part we understood was one's body. The Maharal says it's specifically the body, but we can refer to that as the nefesh, the nefesh of a person, the physicality of a person, that lifeblood of a person. And what the Keser of Malchus means, the kingship of a person, is their emotion, is their ability to have joy. And the way that the Resisei Liala explains, or Tzadok HaKoen, is the ability to be sameach bechelkai, to be happy with one's lot, to be happy, to be in a state of joy, to feel a fullness in one's heart. Now, what Malchus represents, what kingship represents, he speaks about, is ashirus, is wealth. A king has wealth. But what he explains is it's not necessarily that a person who has wealth is actually wealthy. If a person is not happy with their lot, then they're not wealthy, essentially. And what he says here is the greatest kingship, the culmination of kingship, the apex or the epitome of the experience of kingship is happiness with one's lot, a fullness in one's heart, to be totally present with their circumstance, to be totally accepting of themselves and their life and what's around them. And that's a wholeness of the heart. And that's the epitome of kingship. So if we understand what we've seen here, is this Mishnah is really talking about the calibration of the essence of an individual, the essence of oneself. Now, we've gone through these areas, we've gone through these realms of the intellect and saying there's an experience. Now, again, the negative side of Malchus, the negative side of being happy with one's lot, is happiness with what the Resisei Liala refers to as his holulus, or a state of distraction and lightheadedness and experience within wealth of this world, as opposed to the wealth of the inner self and the ability to be happy with one's lot. So that's where Malchus, where kingship can be perverted. That a person now, wants to experience life in a negative way. They want to just experience life as a distraction, as opposed to as a tapping into one's essence. Okay, so these are the hinging elements, and the crown represents the epitome of spiritual experience and really the essence of those experiences through one's wisdom, through one's chokhmah, through one's nefesh or one's body, and the strength of one's body through conquering, and then the inner part of a person, one's emotions, which is represented by the kingship, a fullness, a wealth of experience, a wholeness, a feeling of wealth in this world. And we've understood that Malchus is essentially expressed through sameach bechelka, being happy with one's lot, full. The finality of this is as what Judith has started us off with, which is the Keser Shem Tov Oile Al Gabein. The Keser Shem Tov is our essence. What the Maharal refers to is our mahus, our essence, our essence. Now, it's Oile Al Gabein, which means it is above all of them. While all of these three are experiential within the context of those very tangible, sometimes the intellect's less tangible, but very tangible experiences of life through our wisdom, through our emotion, and through our bodies, a Keser Shem Tov is something quite undefinable. It's the essence of a person. It's the shame. The name of a person is a reference to their essence. And it's almost the part of a person, the accessible part of a person, which is almost inaccessible at the same time. It's intangible, But at the same time, it's the highest part of who a person is. It's their Shem Tov. It's the name, the good name. But the good name, how did you place it as Yehuda? You mentioned it was more the perception of this world and how you engage with this world, where we would maybe place that within the state of Malchus, that I perceive the world in a good way. But what the Kesser Shem Tov is, could be the accessible point of who we are, not based on anything. It's an understanding that we have the right to exist, and we have to have the ability to embrace ourselves, our name, our essence, the ability to let go at the same time as really discovering ourselves through that letting go, of being able to appreciate and envelop a love of the self by letting go and being vulnerable and saying, I am, just through the Shem Tov. That's the name of who we are. And this is really the process of clarification, that it's almost like you can't get to the Shem Tov without clarifying these elements first, clarifying what the intellect is, allowing the person to have a higher state of wisdom within their experience of life. What is the body? Where do I find that state of joy within the body? And where is my experience of the emotion, the joy in my heart, the happiness in my heart? And finally, the experience of the Shem Tov, which is almost an ephemeral experience, which is above all of them. It's on their heads. It's almost like a gas that comes out, a positive gas, the oxygen that comes out from the experience of these three things, which is a reference to the Shem Tov, a deeper state of being. So that's the teaching here. There is so much more depth in understanding this. I'm going to end off with one concept here, which is brought down, which the Resisei Liala brings. And he says, where we speak at Havdalah, we say, La Yehudim haisa oira v'simcha v'sosoin vikar. Okay? We say that to the Jews there was light, there was happiness, there was a state of joy, and there was vikar, a state of wealth or importance or something of value. And he says that within our experiences, within action, we've linked all of these things. All of these things have specific actions, okay? So what we've defined as Torah or a wisdom in ourselves, our intellect, is a reference to the light of Torah. That's why we say, La Yehudim haisa oira. Oira is a state of light, an illumination of the intellect, as opposed to using our intellect. You know, people can get self-obsessed with the news and getting more information about this and more intellectual about that. And that can actually cause them to lose themselves. Well, we're understanding the wisdom of Torah is about finding oneself. And that's the light of the Torah. Then we come to, he explains, what's simcha? Simcha, he says, is the state of Yom Tov. Yom Tov is a state of simcha, okay? Simcha is a reference to what we refer to as malchus, the kingship inside of us, the ability to be happy with one's lot, the ability to feel a wealth. And what happens on Yom Tov? On Yom Tov, it's just a day to be. There's no work that's done. It's just a day to rejoice, to be happy with one's lot. Then the next state we said is sasoin. Sasoin, we said, is happiness or a joy. And he refers to it as a happiness in one's actions. Okay? How do you experience that essence or experience of happiness within one's actions? So most people, again, we said it's through prowess, or it's through conquering, or it's through one's sexuality and conquering the other, or the experience or pleasure of this world. What he says is the deepest essential experience of one's happiness through the physical is the kahuna, is the priesthood. What the priesthood is sanctifying the body, being able to be strong over one's inclination, to be able to overcome the inclination of laziness or desire or the heaviness of the body, and being able to uplift oneself within that spiritual experience. And that's a reference to what we refer to as sasoin. And what mitzvah do we have that you think refers to that? So when we say sasoin, it's a reference to bris milah, to circumcision. And what's circumcision? Circumcision is really the representation of our ability to overcome our inclination. Okay, he says more there, but I'm not going to go into that now. But the final thing is vikar. Vikar is a reference to the mitzvah of tefillin. Tefillin is almost the crown of the self. Tefillin is not in the body, it's above us. It's almost the surrounding light of us, the inner self of us, the value, the sanctity, the worth that is part of us, not premised on anything. But it's only experienced, that oxygen of self is experienced through the calibration of these other three places of distraction and turbulence and destruction that a person might be trapped in, trying to access the state of gift, the state of joy, the state of happiness in life, thinking I'm going to find it there. But in fact, this is what the Mishnah is saying to us here. You won't find it there. It's a perpetual cycle and a perpetual trap. Find the crown of existence. That's what our job is. And that's the crown that we've initially engaged through the study of Talmud, to differentiate and to clarify doubt through that study, is the whole raison d'etre of Judaism and what it means to be a Yehudi, to tap into the essence of life. And these are the three aspects that we then went into of deliberation, calibration, and illumination, to which the finality of that is the Shem Tov, is the good name. The good name is the essence of a person. It's not even based on what others say. It's something so much more ephemeral. It's just embracing the self for the sake of just the self, being a creation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the essence of a person. That's the name, the good name that we are experiencing here. And that's the highest level. Each level also parenthetically has a certain part in the temple. So we know the Keser of Torah, the crown of Torah, represented the Aaron, the ark that was in the temple. Then the Keser of Kahuna, the crown of the priests, represented the Mizbeach HaKatoris, the incense offering. The Mizbeach had something there that had a crown. And then the final element, which was the Keser Malchus, was the Shulchan, the table, the table of bread. And each of them had a crown. Now, which one do you think the Keser Shem Tov represented? So the Resisei Liala says this Keser of Shem Tov is represented by the menorah, by the illumination of the menorah that stood in the temple, and whatever that means, okay? So this is the understanding of this teaching. Are there any questions about the teaching that we've experienced today? Okay.
We missed the last bit of your explanation.
Okay.
Because the internet went a bit off.
Yeah. So what we understood here was the last part in the temple was the menorah. The illumination of the menorah in the temple represented the good name. Okay, that's the understanding there. What do you say there, Judith? Did that make sense to you?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, incredibly beautiful. And it's almost as if the three crowns and three reflecting perfection is the good name, is the ultimate outcome of all three.
Exactly.
Very beautiful.
I think that's a very important statement there. You know, the Maharal said something very enigmatic, and I didn't really understand it, but I think you put it a little bit more into context and clarity. And that is, he says the three levels here is almost like the trunk or the roots. He says, he calls it the branches, the leaves, and the fruits. But the Shem Tov is the tree, so to speak. It's the essence. It's the tree. It's a tree. What is branches, leaves, or the trunk is the branches, the leaves, and the fruits? Well, it's the tree. That's the Shem Tov. That's the good name. And essentially, when a person has calibrated these initial places within themselves through attaining or tapping into the crown of experience in each of these levels, which is really the most sublime form of existence. That's what the Mishnah is all about. You enter into your essence, and that's the real essential experience of self. Yeah. Jenny, what do you want to say? Thanks for that, Judith.
I just want to say I love that. There were at times there were things I wanted to say, but I think they would have distracted us. There were more questions and comparisons with other teachings. But this was fantastic. I loved what Judith said, and I think that this last sentence that you just said, this last Maharal's idea, is fascinating. It absolutely wraps it up. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a real gift, this Mishnah, and thank God for the Mefarshim of the Maharal and the Tzadok HaKoen. I mean, it transforms, and it just really allows us to see the connectivity within the Mishnah in such a deep way. You know, there's so much depth in the experience of understanding of how do you actually get to a good name? What is a good name? You know, it's about calibrating the inner self to access that good name. Yeah, and I will come to Andrea, so you put up your hand, Jenny. Actually, Jenny, let me just give Andrea a turn, and then we'll see if we have some time. We'll come back to you. Yeah, Andrea?
Yeah, so I think it's a fantastic teaching here, is that the movement from the ephemeral self, which is the essence, which we can't see or touch or hear, and then that gradual move towards a physicality in layers, if you will, until a very physical outcome. And that's how we need to kind of create our space or take our space in the world, is through accessing these layers, which is on an essential level, on a soul level, and then thoughts and attitudes and behavior. And we do learn this, that architecturally even, you know, the clothes that we wear and the buildings that we inhabit and our shelters are they levels of, they're layers, they're skins that protect us from the outer physical world. And when we go more towards ourselves, we don't need this physical protection.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
we're
very
going
nice.
to log off now because we have no time left. But thank you for that, Andrea. Very, very beautiful. And Jenny, we thank you all. We can try and engage with this further tomorrow if you want, in the morning before we start the next Mishnah. Okay, but much more to be said. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this Mishnah. There's so much more depth that's brought, but I think that's sufficient for this morning. And Hashem should bless you all. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you who are joining us later on today, a little bit later. All the very best. Be well, guys.
Thanks very much.
It says we have less than a minute.